Welcome to Philosophia.
The Business of Benefits is your no BS, no sales guide to real solutions.
No gimmicks, just the truth about how to take control, transform your benefits, and care for your most valuable asset, your people.
If you're tired of the same old sales pitch and you're ready to rethink your benefits, this podcast is for you. The truth is out there. Are you ready to hear it? Thanks for joining me today on the Business of Benefits podcast. Today, you've got just me, and I am sharing some of the crazier things that I've heard over the last few months, couple of years even. Carrier names, locations, things have all been changed to protect the people that I've talked to over the last few years. So don't worry if you're listening, you're like, oh my God, is she going to talk about something I told her? No, I won't. But these situations are real, very, very real, very concerning. And I hope that those of you that are listening, employers particularly, that you can take away a lot from these real life examples. I made a joke that I wanted to call this episode like crazy shit I've heard. I really hope that that's what we call it, but we'll see if it makes it through production that way. But this is a list. There's about somewhere between 7 and 10 examples of crazy, crazy things that I've heard in the last couple of years. And the whole goal is for you to now hear them and not believe them and protect yourself and your employees. Take a listen. Let me know what you think. Here today with what I hope will be entertaining, enlightening, and potentially insightful for employers. This episode, my team will give it a more PG-friendly title. I'm calling it Crazy Shit I've Heard in the Last Few Months. Again, it probably won't be called that by the time we get to editing because that's a little aggressive, but it is. It's a bunch of absolutely crazy things, a compilation that I've heard over the last few months that have absolutely blown my mind. And granted, I understand I do this every single day. I live, breathe healthcare financing, but some of these are going to absolutely blow your mind. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is a broker refusing to give an employer access to their own carrier portal. So I was speaking to a prospect, 300 employees, insured directly with a carrier, working through a broker that they've had for a really long time. And when I asked, sent the data request, the things that we would need to be able to offer a multi-year healthcare strategy and put a proposal together, she said, oh no, I can't access that. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Like, do you want to screen share? We can help you figure that out. No, I don't have access. Okay, does your CFO, does somebody else in the company? No, we've never been given access in the last 5+ years. That's interesting. Why? Well, we were told we're not allowed. Who told you you're not allowed? Our broker. So you can't pull ID cards, you can't look at your invoices, nope. If we need anything, we have to go to them. And that's part of the problem of why they're actually looking for a new consultant is because the turnaround time from resolution and request is just not there. For something as simple as an ID card or an invoice, they have to wait every single month for it to be emailed to them from the broker. So I said, have you tried reaching out to the carrier directly? Yes, they gave me a rep and I always get the same runaround that I need some type of passcode and they're not able to do it. Okay. Guys, that's crazy. That is absolutely insane. There is no reason that an HR manager, a CFO, a chief people officer, a CEO, whoever is managing the benefits at your company should not have access to the portal to do their job, right? Yes, you can have an amazing broker team that does 99.9% of the service, but how could you possibly be fulfilling your fiduciary duties if you can't even access your own reporting, your own data, your own financials, even if it's limited, right? So red flag number 1, if somebody's refusing to give you access to your own portal, right? Like this is your healthcare plan, employers. You are in charge of it. You own it. It's your data. It's your plan. It's your employees. On the other side, it's your risk. It's your liability. So allowing that to be in the hands and the fate of somebody else, not really a thing. I could if I was listening to this podcast, maybe I'd think, well, maybe somebody doesn't want them to have access for claims data, right? Like maybe there's identifiable claims data in there. That's different. There is certain ways, like if you are in an advanced enough plan where you have access to that type of information, you can de-identify it, with through data analytics portals, you can do all sorts of things. But this was a fully insured carrier portal. There's no reason for that. Have access, have passwords, like know and own that process. Number one. Number two, the same person had no access to the benefits administration portal that was being enrolled on. So they couldn't even enroll new hires. They couldn't pull enrollment reports. They couldn't pull a census. They literally had no reporting access to the Ben Admin portal, right? Ben Admin portal being where all the benefits are housed. Employees are enrolled, employees are terminated, qualifying life events, whether that's your payroll system or you use something like Employee Navigator. In this case, it was Navigator. The HR, not only could she not get into the fully insured carrier portal, she couldn't get into Navigator to pull a census. Guess what this does? It completely prohibits her from seeking out other proposals. Guess who knows that? The person not giving her the keys to her own car. It's very messed up. The next one, different group. The broker refused to give a compensation disclosure. So the employer had been listening to our podcast. We met them at a conference. They saw us speak on stage, and they're hearing all this info. They watched the documentary, and they're hearing about some of these conflicts of interest that exist between brokers and carriers and hospitals and employers. And they're fulfilling their obligation under the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 by asking for a compensation disclosure. So remember, there's 4 pieces to the CAA of 2021. One is having compensation disclosures on all service providers making over $1,000 in your health plan. It's part of the legislation. It's part of being a fiduciary. It's part of meeting your ERISA standards. So the group asks their broker, who they've had for more than a decade, for compensation disclosure. And they actually asked for multiple years because they've never seen one. And the broker just said no. What? Let that sink in. No. Why? Why are you saying no? It's so confusing to me. Like, number one, what are you hiding? Number two, your client is literally not being compliant and could get fined or sued, rather, at the worst case scenario. Why can't you just do your job? Give them a compensation disclosure. The important thing to note on this, it's not like the broker gets in trouble for saying no and refusing to give a compensation disclosure. The employer's the one on the hook. So if you're asking service providers for a disclosure and they're unwilling to give it to you, it's probably a good reason to ask why. So this one is funny to me, and I probably shouldn't laugh, but I'm laughing because it's actually comical. The incumbent broker for an employer told the employer that I'm just like debating whether or not I should say the name of the carrier. So let's just say enter carrier name. We won't say the carrier name. That the carrier, it's either Blue Cross, United, Cigna, or Aetna. I'll give you that much. It's one of the big 4. That you shouldn't go with one of the big 4 carriers in the country because they're about to go bankrupt. So I'm scouring the internet. I have my team looking. I have ChatGPT going. How have I not heard that one of the 4 largest carriers in the entire country, that the health insurance portion of it is going bankrupt? How did I miss this? Like, am I living under a rock? Am I doing things so differently that I wouldn't know if Blue Cross, United, Cigna, and Aetna are going bankrupt? No, I'm not. And actually, it was one of my proposed options because it's a multi-year strategy and we need to use an option like that before we can get to anything more advanced. But guess what? The C-suite believed it. The CFO, the CEO, They believed it because it was coming from somebody that they trusted. I asked for articles. I asked for proof. I asked for, where is this information coming from? Like, I can't find it. And they just said, yeah. And granted, there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings on the table. But when you hear claims like that, right? Like maybe, and it doesn't even have to be that a carrier is going bankrupt, but they have high claims denials. Their PPO discounts are better. That's very vague. Also, guess what? Blue Cross, United, Cigna, and Aetna, they don't share that information. Those like network reimbursements, they don't share that. That's proprietary, that's confidential. Maybe if you're a certain size, but even then, like that is information that they are holding on to. That is their secret sauce, if you will. So things like, I actually have heard this in the last 12 months. Oh, well, United's PPO discounts are much better than Cigna's. We're having the wrong conversation. Why? That's barely something that's going to move the needle long term, right? The actual cost of care will move the needle. The PPO discount is a fake arbitrary number made up. It literally is. So if you hear these sort of blanket statements, right? Question it. Ask for proof. Ask for data. Don't believe everything that you hear. Next, we've got, this is a good one. $125 per employee per month broker fee. All right. Maybe if you aren't in the industry or you aren't looking at comp disclosures from your current broker, you might not know where that lands. That is freaking high. That is way, way, way too high, even for the most complex case. And we do mostly complex business here. Employees in all sorts of states, all sorts of leave policies, all sorts of state disabilities, Hawaii, like you name it. $125 per employee per month as broker compensation is too high. And maybe I'll get some flack for this. Maybe I'll get some messages from brokers disagreeing. That is outrageous. This specific example, the premiums for the employees were $625, and $125 of that was pure compensation. To give you reference, per employee per month on like a fully insured, super turnkey, really easy, not a lot of advocacy and cost containment solutions, you're going to see per employee per month at like 25, 30, somewhere in there, maybe 35, depending on the area of the country. More complex, aggressive programs that require a ton more work on and expertise and knowledge on part of the brokerage, you might see 35, 40, 45, 50. If you're doing crazy advocacy programs and you're bringing all sorts of things in-house, potentially up to 60, maybe a little bit higher, that's rare. Depending on where you are in the country, that is very rare. So 125 is literally double conservatively than what somebody should be making. So that's why it's important with the fiduciary responsibility that employers have, that they're actually benchmarking these things, because you might see 125 and think, okay, cool, no big deal, $125. Times that by your 300 employees, look at the actual work that's being done. This was a fully insured program. There was no work. It was, I always say this, eyes closed. Like, you can operate those plans with your eyes closed if you have a good service team. The strategy, the difference, it comes with innovation, and it comes with cost savings, and it comes with better health outcomes. That requires skill sets, which should be compensated appropriately. But 125 is outrageous. So I've also heard, I ran into one the other day, 112 per employee per month. Still incredibly high. Also heard of minimums. We're not, like a brokerage saying we're not going to take less than a $50,000 implementation fee, and then we need a $20,000 fee to market the plan. And, it's a different way of, it's not a per employee per month, it's a fee, which might sound a little bit better, but you really need to look benchmark, gauge, do these numbers make sense for the work that's being done? 125 will never make sense. All right, this one's kind of fun. All right. These ones are just painful for me some days because it's like, how is this still a thing? I spoke to a company that said they didn't want to lose. They aren't happy with their broker. The service isn't good. The renewal experience sucks. Increases every year. Same old, same old. But they weren't willing to have a conversation with anybody different because they were getting NHL tickets in like a box for their C-suite once a month. So once a month, they got a bunch of tickets during the NHL season. They could go into this fancy box, have a bunch of fancy food, hang out with a bunch of fancy people. And that was such a big part of their culture that they weren't willing to. Actually, they said, "Do you offer NHL box ticket seats? How about this? We'll save you so much money you can buy them yourself." Right? Like, how about that? There's so many things wrong with that type of, it's almost like rebating or bribing with that type of arrangement. And I mean, we see it all the time. Steak dinners. Oh, they sponsor us for the annual corporate 5K. Is that something your team would do? I'm willing to have conversations around like what service and items you've had in the past that have been really impactful for your team. But when it just comes down to, somebody's giving you gifts and that's the reason that you continue to work with them, but they're not adding value, they're not moving the needle, they're not supporting your employees. I have a really hard time with that. And honestly, it's good to hear this stuff early on in the process because you realize very quickly, like, okay, there's not a values alignment here, right? But I will tell you, there's a wave of transparency. It's like the next generation of business owners that are not willing to stand for that. They aren't impressed by the golf trips and the steak dinners and the schmoozing, right? And the whining and the dining and the come on our trip. I know that's a really big thing in some industries. Oh, we have our annual conference and basically spoil the shit out of all of our clients. That's okay. Like that stuff, if, it's okay if there's a bunch of like learning objectives tied to it, and it's not the reason that the employer stays. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard NHL box seats, Orlando Magic tickets, the corporate 5K. Like there's example after example after example of we actually don't want to work with them, but we don't want to lose this perk. And that's just not a good enough of a reason under ERISA, under your fiduciary responsibility, as a business in general. So I'm really excited about the new wave of leaders. And it's not necessarily an age thing. That's not what I mean at all. But there definitely is a mentality of younger leaders where they're just not willing to be played with that way. They're like, no, we're going to do what's best for our people. And that's it. You either deliver results and you can still like people and not work with them, right? Like I have so many examples of that where we've been brought in and there's still a great relationship with the prior consultant. They don't dislike them. They just couldn't take them on this multi-year journey. So it was time to end that relationship. People serve needs and a purpose for certain periods of your life and of your business, and you just need to flow with whatever that is, right? All right, this next one's kind of funny. A broker severance. We chose to work with a team that has a collective 250 years of experience on their benefits team. Why do you need 250 years of experience? And honestly, I challenge that mindset aggressively because the healthcare issue that we're having has been around a minute. It's a problem, right? But it hasn't been around that long. And definitely not 250 years. These agencies that go around touting, oh, we're 70 years old, we're 100 years old, we're 200 years old, maybe on property and casualty and maybe other lines of insurance, but employee benefits, that's a relatively new and recent industry. And it's only really become the problem that it's become since the ACA. So you're talking less than 30 years. So if in these 30 years that benefits has really been the problem that it's been for businesses, you're working with somebody that has continually done the exact same thing, perpetuating the status quo the entire time, because that's all their business model allows for, why would you want 250 years of experience, right? This is a 30-year-old, if that, problem. So I challenge that mindset, and I challenge it again aggressively because it's a different set of people. It's a different group that's actually not wanting to close their eyes and profit from the status quo. And they're wanting to make a difference and actually change the system, actually bring results, actually help. So experience, results don't necessarily go hand in hand. Next one. Okay, this is just kind of funny. This was a couple years ago actually, but this one was, we actually chose to work with a small local broker. This was a company out of the northwest of the country. And I'm like, oh, okay. What's their name? Aon. Aon's probably the largest insurance brokerage in the world. Definitely the US, but probably in the world. So be wary of everybody. Like I do understand and I do agree that healthcare is local. Healthcare is actually very local. The solutions that will work for a company in Michigan are not the solutions that work for a company in Hawaii or a company in Florida or even a company in Texas. Every market has a different hot and cold to certain strategies. Some work really well, like reference-based pricing. Some do not work at all. And you might think, okay, I'm working with somebody local that understands the market. They may understand the market, but they might not understand the solutions, right? And that's different. It's a lot easier to work with somebody that completely understands the ins and outs of how these solutions work or don't work, allow them to go into the local market, find local partners, have local conversations, and design a local program versus working with somebody that maybe, all they know is the same 4 options every single year, but their office is right down the road. So be wary of the local thing, and also be wary of I've heard it actually multiple times in the last year or two, where, we chose a local regional player, and then the name that follows is a large publicly traded brokerage that's responsible to its shareholders, not to its clients. So what that tells me is there's a lot of talk around being local, being regional, being boots on the ground, being strappy, being agile, being versatile, right? Which is the things you want in more of like a boutique experience. But that's a sales tactic. That's marketing. That's not reality. Those business models operate very differently than what they're saying. Okay, so this was a couple weeks ago. When asked about their current setup, the benefits administrator responded, she was complaining about the lack of service with the current account management team, a lot of turnover on the account management team. But then she said, but I understand. And I said, well, why? What makes you think that that's okay? And she said, well, we're a small company for them. This company, by the way, has close to 1,000 employees. We're a small company for them. I know we're not their biggest priority. We don't make them a ton of money. So I completely understand if we just, we're not first on the priority list. Like that's how it goes. That's business. And I think you can tell by the way that I'm telling this story, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. If you are a client, you are a client. Nobody is more important than the next. She did follow that with, and we get access to, mineral HR, and we can call an ERISA attorney if we wanted to, and some handbooks. So, we don't necessarily get like service right away, but we have some cool things that they give us. Every brokerage in the country has mineral. Everybody has access to ERISA attorneys. Everybody has a handbook. I can tell you that confidently. Everybody. Those are what we call value adds, right? Like employee navigator, like mineral. That's not a solution. That's not a game changer. That's not a needle mover. Those are value adds. Those are shiny objects that are put into proposals to make things look bigger and better. I really wanted to be like, well, how often are you actually using those things? Right. And I did ask her, well, how often do you use the ERISA attorney? Well, we've only had to use them a couple times over the last few years, but every time it ended up being that I needed to go find my own ERISA attorney. Right? Like, you don't have access to them and you had to wait. And she also mentioned having to wait a really long time to even get access to one of them because, again, the larger clients were prioritized. So size doesn't matter. Don't make excuses for why you're not being prioritized, and don't be distracted by shiny objects. Everybody has them. Ask for them. They'll give them to you. But that's not really what matters. What matters is, are they managing the frequency and the severity of your healthcare claims? All right, my rant is finished. That was the crazy shit that I've heard. I added in a couple from a couple years ago. It's been all over the place, some of the things that we've heard. But if you saw a theme, it's trust and verify. Wait, let me make sure I say that right. Verify before trusting, I think, is the theme. Don't believe everything that you hear. Do your due diligence, have your own process, hold people accountable. I'm actually going to do an entire episode on how to hold your vendor partners accountable, whether it's your broker, your TPA, your carrier. But nonetheless, employers, my message remains the same. You have the control. Don't let somebody pull the wool over your eyes. Do not allow them to BS you. This is your plan, your program, and you hold literally all the power. Start using it. Thanks, guys, for listening. Always open to your feedback. Don't forget, share, like, subscribe. Thanks.